Hello, today is Wednesday, March 18th, and welcome to episode 571 of Fault Lines, the National Security Institute's podcast that gets you quickly up to speed 3 times a week on the national security and foreign policy debates shaking up America. I'm NSI Senior Fellow Jessica Jones, and I'm joined today by two of our favorite A's, Senior Fellows Andy Kaiser and Algene Sargery, and of course, our usual and regular podcast king, Les Munson. All right, we're back to Iran today, folks, but we're venturing a little further than the United States, and we're looking to our friends and neighbors, or not neighbors, our friends and allies over in Europe. Reporting over the last couple of days has focused on the growing frustration of the president when it comes to the, I would call it, commitment of non-commitments coming from our NATO allies and European friends to, join a coalition to reopen the Strait of Hormuz and just Iran efforts in general. You can look to our allies, including the UK, France, Germany, etc. So far, most have declined to send naval forces, and there's been, I'll say, no appetite to join a U.S.-led mission. President Trump has truth socialed out a few messages on the topic, ranging from "this is a very foolish mistake" to angrily saying, "Actually, we don't need your help. We're going to go it alone." And yesterday, the frustration was on display when the Irish Prime Minister visiting the White House for a St. Patrick's Day celebration. Happy post St. Patrick's Day, folks. There was a little bit of airing of grievances there. And actually, President Trump said that he had prevented a nuclear holocaust. So a very light St. Patrick's Day celebration at the White House, I would say. So I just want to, focus a little bit on our European friends. Andy, I'm going to turn it first to you. Are you surprised by the European leaders' response? Do you think President Trump is going to truth social his way angrily to a change in policy from our friends?
Probably not, but it's certainly in Europe's strategic interests to contain the situation in Iran, to open shipping lanes through the Straits of Hormuz. Last time I checked, folks in Rome, in Paris, in London also have to fill up their cars or their buggies, whatever they might call them, their Fiats. So I do think it's in their strategic interests, but it's not surprising. I think, that they're hesitating. For one, we did not bring them along for the ride, so to speak. During the Iraq War, for example, though President Bush was much maligned, you had major players supporting that operation: the UK, Australia, Poland, famously, the president mentioned and got ridiculed for. But I think the Europeans, Churchill has a great line about allies, and the Europeans, though individually may not have a huge geopolitical push on the world stage. Italy, for example, ruled half the world for, 500 years. But today, their economy is the size of Texas. They're militarily limited. But when you collectively take the EU and Europe more broadly, it is a powerhouse. It would be the second or third largest economy in the world, a powerful capable military, maybe slightly increasingly so going forward, hopefully, because they have let their power atrophy in the military space for sure. But not surprising, though I do think they should think about it carefully, maybe get over their feelings a little bit about not being treated properly, and at least get on board with opening such a key strategic shipping lane as the Strait of Hormuz.
Algene, what do you think of Andy's point about the president not bringing our European friends along, before the operations began?
I think it's a really important point, and it really points to the lack of planning and coordination when it comes to this war. Generally, as Andy said, there is some pre-planning. There's, you have to get people on sides, right, before you want them to do something for you, especially risk the lives of their citizens for you. And so it's really important that we do have some sort of pre-planning, pre-coordination on that front. And here's the other thing. Are they friends or are they frenemies, right? Every other day you're insulting them in some way or another. Why? I mean, I wouldn't want to help somebody who's always insulting me. Don't ask me to do something for you when you're shooting me in the foot every other day. So it's really an interesting dynamic there. My son's in middle school, and so I get to see a lot of the discussion amongst frenemies, and it's I think he has a friend that is always on him about something, but then always wants his help with something. And he's like, no, right? I'm like, go Asa, you stand up to that guy. So don't let a friend abuse your friendship.
Okay, fault lines, folks. We got to be nice to Algene because we need her back on the show. That's the lesson I just took from there. Les, I know you like to be the wrench in every discussion. So what do you have for us this Wednesday?
So, first of all, I enormously respect Andy and Algene's views, and there's a huge Venn diagram between where they are and I am. But I do have a slightly different take, which is if you go back to the Obama years when we were negotiating what I thought was a very bad nuclear deal with Iran, and I would use the word appeasement. I know everyone else doesn't, but that's fine. We had a very kind of pro-appeasement policy towards Iran. The Europeans loved that. They were with us 100%. The people who were against it were Iran's neighbors in the Middle East. Israel and Sunni Arab states were very concerned about what the Obama administration was doing with its very, in my view, weak policy on Iran. And then in the first Trump administration, not that long ago, 8 years ago, President Trump was actually pursuing a tougher deal with Iran, a tougher nuclear deal, and the Europeans would not work with him on it. They would not play along. The Europeans have been in favor of appeasement. My point here is the Europeans have been in favor of appeasement with Iran for quite some time. It is not because President Trump insulted them recently. And I'm not in favor of insults, and I think the Greenland thing was definitely played the wrong way. And I understand the so-called lingering resentments, but that's not the reason for the European policy. They have not been there over time. So Trump's behavior is not dispositive here. And frankly, I agree with the earlier statements. I think the Europeans should be with us. They ought to be able to put on their big boy pants and overcome a few insults and, Trump's behavior, which we all know is there. It's kind of baked into the deal. This is the way he behaves. He's now been elected as president of the United States twice, so folks are just going to have to deal with it. But on the policy per se, the Europeans have been wrong for a long time, and they're wrong today.
Wow. Okay. Well, it's a difference between not, President Trump's behavior not being dispositive towards the Europeans' position, but also it's not helping them come on board. It's a lot of big boy pants. That's some big pants you're asking them to put on, less. Let's make them smaller. Let's make it more easy.
They can do it.
Faith in Europeans.
I have faith in their ability to put on their pants.
Says the guy without a tie. All right. Thanks, folks. Thanks to Kelly Crowley, Grace Trice, Claude Jennings, and the entire NSI team for helping producing today's episode. Join us on Friday to enjoy the wrap of your week for another episode of Fault Lines, NSI's podcast that gets you smart fast on the national security and foreign policy debates shaking up America. We're on YouTube, so check out Andy in his suit and tie. We don't get to see it often, so if you want proof that he owns a tie, please watch us on YouTube. And if you like what you heard or saw, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe.